Hi, I'm Dr. Tiffany Rao, and I am going to chat for the next hour on social emotional coaching. Now, I teach in the Department of Special Education at Cal State Fullerton. And while I've mostly framed this to work with special education teachers, really the content I'm going to share is applicable to any classroom that you may be teaching. So thanks for tuning in, and let's get right to it. If you would like to access the slides, go ahead and pause the video and you can use that QR code and have access to these slides. All right, so before I really get into what SEL coaching is, I want to just share this wheel of the 5 areas of social emotional learning. You may have seen something like this before. It's self-management, self-awareness, responsible decision-making, relationship skills, and social awareness. So these are the 5 areas that encompass social emotional learning and the skills that we want children and adults to always be working toward in order to be successful in life, to put it sort of simply like that. When students have these skills in place, they tend to do better in school, have better relationships with their friends and their families, and they do much better in the workplace when they grow up. Here's more of a breakdown of these SEL competencies with several sub-skills beneath each one that you can look at more on the slides if you're interested, but I'm not going to spend too much time on this because this, again, is foundational, and I'm going to go into the coaching aspect. I want to really spend the most time on that. So first of all, let's just define what is a coach. From the Cambridge English Dictionary, their definition is someone whose job is to teach people to improve at a sport, skill, or school subject. And a very simplified view of teaching, but I think it's useful here. Teaching is focused on the acquisition of new knowledge and skills. If we just boil it down very simply, and I know it's so much more nuanced and impactful and complex than that, but that's kind of what we're looking at, acquiring new skills and knowledge. But I think that coaching is a term that really fits better in SEL because it's focused on refining and developing knowledge and skills. So when we're looking at effective SEL instruction, we wouldn't want to just find a lesson off the internet and do a new SEL lesson or teach an SEL unit maybe for an hour every day, every Friday. It should be infiltrated into our everyday practice as teachers so that we can really coach students through this skill that these skills that they are using either successfully or poorly every single day, almost every minute of the day. So a once a week kind of SEL lesson or time slot is not going to cut it. We want to infuse it in all of our interactions with students to some degree or another, but definitely throughout the day, every day. So some characteristics of effective SEL coaches. Number one, they are aware of emotions in themselves and their students, even when they are at a low intensity. So this starts with ourselves. We must be aware of the emotions in ourselves so that we can regulate them accordingly. Because if we're not regulated, how can we help our students regulate? And we want to know, or we want to be aware of these emotions when they're low. So let's say we see, oh, Johnny seems like he's getting a little frustrated with his math work. That's the time to go over and help Johnny through that situation. Don't wait until he is explosive, because you have the best chance of getting a handle on it and getting through to Johnny when it's at a low intensity. Same thing with ourselves. Also, Coaches use emotional moments as an opportunity to connect and teach effective regulation instead of shaming a student for emotional outbursts. So that means that we're going to teach these skills through connection rather than through punishment. Now, that's not to say that I am telling you to avoid all consequences. There's definitely a time for natural consequences, and it's very important to set limits and have rules in place to ensure student safety and to ensure that students are all able to learn. But we learn so much more. Our brains are wired for connection. And when we are connecting, our brains are learning. When we're disconnected with punishment or we feel shame, we feel bad about our behavior, like traditionally behaviors have been taught, right? Through punishment, they've got to learn one way or another, right? We've heard that. They've got to learn. So they have to understand that it hurts a little bit when they act this way. They're going to get punished. That actually serves to shut the brain down. And then their learning is not going to be as effective. So we want to use these emotional moments as an opportunity to connect. Number 3, they can see things from a student's perspective and validate how the student feels. So we might be thinking from our adult perspective, gosh, they're being so dramatic. This is not a big deal. But to that child, it is a big deal. So we want to see it from their perspective, again, so that we can make that connection with them. And when a student expresses emotions, we're going to help them verbally label those emotions. Hey, I notice your face is kind of, your brows are like this, and I'm sensing you're getting frustrated. Would you say you're getting frustrated? We're going to give them the words, because if they don't have the words yet, we want them to learn how to label their own emotions. That leads them to self-awareness and ultimately better emotion regulation. And then finally, this is really where the meat of the coaching comes in. They problem solve with the student, set limits, discuss goals, find strategies to deal with the situation that caused the negative emotion. So here's a few findings from the research. For one, teachers who were mandated, right? Some districts are mandating SEL instruction. But I think sometimes what we're missing is that it starts with you piece as a teacher. And this particular study found that teachers that were mandated to teach SEL but did not cultivate their own practice, did not work on their own social emotional growth, worsened their students' SEL skills. So even though they were teaching SEL, those students' skills in the teachers' classrooms who were not regulated themselves and did not have those skills themselves, they went down in their skills. But while teachers who developed their own SEL skills improved their own well-being and the social, emotional, and academic development of their students. So it's a win-win. Your own life and overall well-being gets better, and so does that of your students. So a huge takeaway that I am hoping you'll get from this is that it starts with you. It starts here, because a dysregulated teacher is obviously, right, not going to be effective at helping students regulate. Other research showed that students learn SEL skills better when teachers can effectively model these skills. Seems pretty obvious, but we've got the research to back that up. And teacher social emotional competence influences the quality of student-teacher relationships, classroom management, and overall school climate. We also know that when the student-teacher connection is strong and is positive, students experience better relationships with their peers, a better connection to the school community at large, and better academic achievement. So one way that you can start with you is by noticing and challenging any subconscious beliefs that you may have about children expressing big feelings and behaviors. we all have these subconscious beliefs. And when we are not aware of them, then they are going to be very sneaky and sort of drive our approach to interacting with kids who are having big feelings and behaviors. So it's important to bring them to the surface, notice them, observe them in a mindful way without judgment, and then challenge those beliefs. So adults can have a tendency to dismiss, criticize, or trivialize children's feelings. Why do we do this? Because we're frustrated and we want it to just like stop. We might find a child's emotions offensive for a number of different reasons. If it could be that when you were growing up, you were taught that expressing your emotions is wrong. And so you're offended to see kids they weren't taught this at home. My parents never would have put up with this. And look at how this kid is just coming here, letting their feelings spill out all over the place. But there can be all kinds of reasons. Again, what's important is to notice and challenge. So here are some of the thoughts or beliefs that you might notice come up for you. You might tell a child it's no big deal. You're fine. These are ways to downplay the emotion, and we think that it will help them move on, right? So take the example of like a kid falls down and they say their arm hurts. And we don't see any scrapes or scratches. They look fine to us. You're fine. We want them to get back out there and play and not, get stuck in a spiral of being upset about their arm. But the child may very well be feeling pain and they might be feeling scared because they fell. Maybe they're not feeling a lot of pain, but they're scared. And so they go to mom or dad or caregiver or teacher, whoever it is, for a little bit of support. And very often we hear, "You're fine, go play." The intent is good. You want to help them move on. You just fell. It's no big deal. But one thing that we're teaching kids when we do that is don't believe what your body's telling you. Believe what I'm telling you. And I'm telling you that you're fine. Now that's going to interfere with that child developing self-awareness because they don't trust themselves. The teacher or the significant adult in their life is telling them, don't trust what you feel. I'm telling you that you're fine. We want kids to listen to how they feel. We want them to trust how they feel so that eventually they can get better at responding accordingly in a way that's going to be effective for them. So a more effective response to that would look like, "Oh my gosh, did you fall? Are you okay? Does your arm hurt? Were you scared? Oh man, that is scary when we fall. Do you want to sit with me for a few minutes until you feel ready to rejoin the group?" And then no big deal. They can just sit by you, feel safe again, and then they'll rejoin the group when they're ready. That's a lot more empowering and validating. Another one, "Too bad, so sad." I've used this one myself. Hey, it's catchy, right? It rhymes. Too bad, so sad. It's dismissive. There are other ways that we can go about helping that child through a crying episode. Another very common, popular one is you get what you get and you don't throw a fit. Again, I have used this one myself as well. Now, let me talk about this one for a moment because there's one way of using it that I think is fine. Let's say it's like field day or something and everybody gets popsicles. There are not enough colors for everyone to have their favorite color and let them pick their favorite color, and you don't have time to, okay? It's just not going to work. That's okay. If you say up front, "Hey guys, you get what you get, you don't throw a fit, okay? We're getting popsicles. Try to just be okay with the color that you get because we don't have enough of every color to ask each one of you which one you want." So that's how it's going to go, right? That's upfront kind of preparing them. Instead, if you pass out the popsicles and a kid gets blue and they wanted red and they're very disappointed about it. And then you say, you get what you get and you don't throw a fit. Now that's more dismissive, right? Instead, you could use more of a validating statement like, oh man, you wanted red. I'm so sorry. We just don't have time for everyone to pick their own color. I hope the blue tastes good. Maybe give it a try, but sorry about that. I wish everybody could have their favorite color, whatever. I know, again, it's hard to take that time sometimes, but if you can think of a more validating, quick statement to make, that might also be more effective. A couple of more statements: stop crying. Sometimes we feel like kids are just going on and they just need to stop. But again, that's pretty invalidating. Or these are thoughts that you might notice in yourself. He's 8 years old and he should know better by now. The problem with that one is that he might not know better. Everyone is developing on their own timeline. And while some 8-year-olds know better, and even some 4-year-olds know better, some don't. The brain does not stop developing until 25 years old. So who's to say who should know better at any point in time? And some kids know better on some days, and other days they're just having a rough day and they are doing the best they can, right? So a way to challenge that belief is, well, he's having a rough day today, instead of he should know better. Another one is, he is doing this on purpose. He just wants attention. This is so manipulative. If you have that thought, I want you to challenge it. Don't judge yourself for having it. Okay, you're just responding to something that's hard and frustrating for you, but challenge it, notice it, and instead think, I don't 100% know the purpose behind this behavior. It could be attention. It could be that he just wants to get what he wants. It could be that he didn't sleep well last night. I don't really know. Let's go into it assuming the best, right? Or just kind of giving the benefit of the doubt. Really, that's what we all want on our worst days, right? We just want some grace. We want the benefit of the doubt that we're having a rough day. Because if you go into an interaction with a child who's having a behavior with these assumptions, that's going to negatively impact how you handle that interaction. You are already going into it more disconnected from the child. So if you have more of a benefit of the doubt thought, or you challenge your thoughts and replace it with something that gives the child a little more grace, then you're going to go into that interaction in a more connecting way, and you will be more effective. So invalidation of emotions can lead to some unwanted outcomes, such as if we make an assumption that this is for attention or this is for whatever, and then we act according to that assumption, we may miss the real issue, thus making our approach and our efforts not as effective as they could be, and maybe completely ineffective. Also, children feel unheard. They might start to feel that their emotions are wrong. And this can later manifest as anxiety, depression, an inability to focus, an increase in behavior problems, projection of pain onto others. And studies show that children with emotion dismissing adult caregivers, parents, teachers, those kids tend to have more negative emotions and more behavior problems. Whatever is not able to be expressed is going to fester, right? We've all maybe experienced that, or we're aware of it, that in some people, if you're pushing your anger down, it's only a matter of time before you're going to blow up. So we don't want that. That is not the way that we want our kids to cope with things. So a few don'ts, and then I will get into the do's. Don't tell a child how they should feel. we want to just validate how they're feeling, and that's the starting point. We can offer them alternative ways of viewing things later on when they're calm. We can offer them coping skills once they're calm, but in the moment, we want to validate. Don't criticize or shame negative emotions. This actually interferes with emotional development. Don't dismiss feelings. Don't be impatient. Don't expect immediate results. Let me come back to that one in just a second. And don't make negative assumptions about the purpose of their behavior. All right, back to expecting immediate results. Like I said, the brain isn't finished developing until age 25. So we would not expect kids to just master social emotional competencies by the time they finish 6th grade or by the time they finish 12th grade. And in fact, don't expect yourself to have mastered social emotional competencies. Even as full-grown functional adults, we always have to grow when we're put in new situations. So let's say you're working in one district and you've really got it together. You're doing great. Your principal loves you. You understand the expectations and everything's going great. And then you move, or you just need to get another job at another district for whatever reason. Now you're in a new district with new social norms, new overall school climate and culture, new expectations, new ways of doing things, new people, different personalities. You are going to have to grow your social emotional skills to adjust to be successful in that new place. So we're never done growing. We should only be expecting kids to show some growth, but not mastery. And this is an investment. And an investment, you don't expect immediate returns. Okay, you're planting seeds. You are working with kids in these small interactions. And sometimes it's kind of like putting pennies in a bucket, and you're not really seeing much growth until you've been sticking with it and sticking with it. And now 3 months later, 6 months later, you look back and you think, oh, this is very rewarding because now I see that my efforts are paying off. Sometimes though, you might not see it in the year that you have that kiddo, and the next teacher gets to reap the rewards. But never underestimate the power of planting seeds. Some years are for planting seeds. Some years are for harvest. Sometimes you get it all in one year with a kid. And if you're a special ed teacher, you're probably going to have them for several years. So you will get to see that payoff, but be patient. All right. Love this way of looking at looking at SEL coaching. Okay. Let me break this down for you. So this is looking at kind of our nervous system. When we are calm, down here in the green, the ventral vagal, they're calling it. This is where we are calm, we are connected, we are settled, grounded, curious, compassionate, mindful. This is good. This is where we all want to be. This is where we need to stay as teachers. And that's where we always want our students to be. Okay. But then when we're getting frustrated, we go up in here to the sympathetic nervous system. We're hyper aroused. We're sensing danger, and we go into fight or flight, which is frustration. Might start out here as frustration, irritation, anger, rage, or on the flight side, worry, anxiety, fear, panic. When we see our students here, we want to respond in a way that can help bring them back down to here, not in a way that puts them up into freeze. If we respond to students here by joining them, and we start to get irritated and angry, and we try to shut down their expression of emotions or shut down their behavior, you may very well get something that looks like compliance, but actually they've gone up here to freeze. They are now feeling helpless. They might be feeling down, numb. They might be disassociating. They might be feeling shame, hopeless, trapped. They are freezing. Looks like compliance, but this is not optimal learning right here. This is not going to help them grow in their social emotional skills. So if our students are on their way up here and then we notice we're getting irritated, we're getting a little angry, first step, don't shut down that student, regulate yourself. And I'm going to talk about some ways to do that. Regulate yourself so that you can come back down here to the green and then help that student join you, hopefully, in the green. Sometimes teachers have been teaching behavior from fight or flight themselves for so long that they really think it's effective. So like when I was a teacher in schools, I really tried to focus on keeping myself calm and co-regulating. And so I would stay calm, I would validate. I was a psychology undergrad, bachelor's degree. So I took a lot of that into teaching with me, and I really focused on validating. And this was some years ago, of course, and it was kind of foreign to a lot of the teachers that I was working with. The school culture was not one that supported students in their emotional growth at this time, at the time that I was there. So I would come at a student behavior, and maybe it would be out on the playground, maybe it would be right outside my classroom where I knew they needed a little space, and I would step outside with them. My aides would be inside, taking over the rest of the class. And I would be calm. I try to be connecting, validating the student, bringing them down. Another teacher would walk by sometimes and think I was being weak for coming from this place right here of calm. They mistook my calm for weakness. They mistook the validation for giving in or indulging the student, because they were used to coming from here. Fight, usually fight, right? Punish, shut it down, nip it in the bud. I don't put up with that. And sometimes they would even try to intervene because they assumed I didn't know what I was doing. Over time, they saw that the students in my class were doing very well, and they started to respect my approach a little bit more. But it was really frustrating for me because, for one thing, this is very hard to explain to someone who just doesn't buy into it. But what they were doing was responding with anger, punishment, maybe some shaming, shutting it down. And then the students would go up here and they would think, see, it works. I don't put up with it. They quiet right down. They know that they're in trouble. That's what it takes. But that is not what we want. So I find this chart really helpful to kind of remember when you might be getting activated, and remember that that's not going to help your students deactivate or de-escalate. The best way to help your students de-escalate is through connection, staying engaged with them, staying curious. What made you feel that way? Staying compassionate, mindful in the moment. Much, much more effective for the long term. It might take a little longer in the moment, though, sometimes, than punishment. All right. So let's talk about the steps to SEL coaching. Now I'm going to tell you exactly what to do. I'm going to go over the steps one by one, and then I'm going to give you an example of how to apply the steps. So number one, notice emotions in yourself and in your students. Noticing and allowing yourself and your students to feel emotions is step number one. This allows you to co-regulate effectively. Let me talk about co-regulation. Co-regulation actually comes from early childhood. And the folks in early childhood understand very well that simply by sitting with a tantruming toddler and staying calm yourself can sometimes all by itself help to calm that tantruming toddler down. Sometimes you might need to get a little more creative than that, but that is step number one. And now we are recognizing that this applies to childhood and teen years as well, even young adults. If somebody is dysregulated, number one best step you can take is keep yourself calm. So we have what's called mirror neurons in our brains. And these neurons' job is to mirror the people that we are with. So if teacher walks in super just frustrated, scattered all over the place because there was traffic and she was running late and didn't get everything ready for the day, the students are going to pick up on that. And I would expect to see some behaviors in that class that day. Not to fault the teacher, because it was life happening and that is really hard to deal with. But it's important to remember that kids are going to, without even realizing it, it is a brain neurological thing, they're going to mirror us. So when you co-regulate and you take deep breaths, or maybe you even step away from that child for a few minutes to take some deep breaths, that is an investment, a very valuable investment that you're making, so that you can come back and now have calm, so that that student's mirror neurons will pick up on your calm. Don't let your mirror neurons respond to the student. Make yours the alpha emotions or state of mind, so that that child can come down. So it's important to address the issue sooner rather than later when emotions have become completely unraveled. Number two, listen to that student with empathy and attunement. Now, you want to try to mirror the student's emotions, but not at the same level as the student. Okay, that would not be the way to go. But if the student is angry, reflect a little bit of that anger in a way that's empathetic. You can do it in your facial expression, not like disapproving anger, like you're angry at the child. But if the child is saying, well, so-and-so took my pencil, you might say, oh my gosh, they took your pencil. Well, tell me more, right? Just a little bit in the face that you're on their side. Now, that doesn't mean that you're going to go punish the child that took the pencil because maybe the kid didn't even realize it. Who knows? But for that moment, you get it. Oh my gosh, that is so frustrating if somebody takes something from you, right? If the student's sad, you might reflect that in your voice and expression, right? Oh my gosh, your hamster died. Oh, I'm so sorry. That would just be heartbreaking. Okay. So you're staying calm, but reflecting a little bit. And that is staying attuned and showing empathy. Very, very effective in helping the child to calm down. Number three, acknowledge, validate, and label, even if you don't agree. Okay. So here's a few examples. Acknowledge, it might be, it looks like you're mad because recess is over. Validate, it makes sense that you would be angry or disappointed. Recess is so fun. And then emotion labeling helps the child turn upsetting feelings into a definable and normalized experience. So that might look like, and you want to do it without judgment, that might look like, I could tell you're upset because you turned away from the school, crossed your arms, and you have a frown on your face. And that told me that maybe you were angry. This is a powerful way to teach kids to accept their emotions, and it strengthens your connection with the student. The student sees that you're tuned into them, they feel it, and you're not judging them. Again, this does not mean that you're going to just let them have any behavior with no consequences or no teaching of other ways to handle it, it doesn't mean that it's a free-for-all. But this is how you get to the student so that they will be open to what you have to teach them. Then, if the student seems to be calming down a little bit and connecting with you, then you can begin problem solving. If they're not there yet, you need to acknowledge and validate a little bit longer, show a little more empathy. If time is an issue, you can always end on sort of an empathetic note and then come back to it later. So now begin problem solving. You want to ask questions in a non-judgmental way. Let's say in the recess example, you might say, what were you doing right before the bell rang? Oh, that sounds fun. I bet that was a lot of fun. Such a bummer when fun things have to stop for now. Can you think of anything that would make it easier for you to come inside from recess? So again, we're not giving in and saying, oh, that sounds like so fun. You know what? Tomorrow, I'm just going to let you stay outside all day. We're not going to do that. They still need to come in from recess. We still want them to come in from recess on time. So we're going to make them part of the problem solving. Now, maybe you're working with a student who can't verbalize very much. So maybe you're going to share some ideas. Maybe they're not at the stage yet where they can help problem solve. That's the most effective, is when you're collaborating together, but not all kids are there yet. So you might offer some solutions or share some ideas, either right there in the moment or later if the child is not ready. And then teaching coping skills. For anger, a very common and effective coping skill is to take deep breaths. So you can do this by doing it together or model it yourself when you're under stress. And reappraising is also effective. So it's different from a quick, you're fine. This is not a big deal. Instead, it looks like, I can feel sad about this, but it doesn't have to ruin my day. So you can teach this by modeling it often. If they've heard you reappraise a situation, like, oh my gosh, you guys, I just had so much traffic and I was running late, and we're going to do our art project and I don't have everything ready. We're going to have to push this until the end of the lunch. You know what? I got to take 5 deep breaths. I'm going to have Mrs. Klein take over, and I'm going to go take some deep breaths. And then you come back and you say, all right, I was so stressed about the traffic, but it doesn't have to ruin my day. Let's have a great day. If you're doing this often, it's going to be easier for you to remind your students of how to do that for themselves, and they will have seen it in action. So when you're stressed, when you're frustrated, when you're overwhelmed, if you're sad about something, now you don't need to air your dirty laundry or anything like that. But if things happen during the day that are hard for you, you can use that as an opportunity to teach and model coping skills to your students. It can help you become more aware of it. It can help you grow your own SEL skills. And it is really, really valuable learning lessons and opportunities to teach that to your students. Okay, let me give you an example now. So let's look at this, which is tackling. Jeremy is an 8-year-old boy who often runs toward his peers and slams into them or tackles them to the ground. He laughs when he does this, but his peers do not like it. The teacher and his parents are concerned about his behavior because somebody could get hurt, and it's interfering with Jeremy making friends because the kids don't like this. So let's take it step by step. Number 1, notice emotions in self and student. Teacher might notice tension rising in himself as Jeremy once again tackles another student. The teacher's worried someone could get hurt. Teacher feels frustrated and angry that Jeremy keeps doing this even after he's told him not to. And he notices in himself, the teacher, a strong desire coming up to punish Jeremy so that he learns a lesson. Okay, these are the feelings coming up for the teacher. And instead of acting on those feelings, the teacher's just going to notice them. Then the teacher notices Jeremy's laughing, a strong indication that Jeremy is enjoying the behavior. The teacher feels even more angry now because Jeremy's laughing while doing this unsafe behavior, right? We know how frustrating that is when a child is doing some kind of behavior and laughing about it, right? So the teacher notices some judgmental thoughts that pop up like, what a brat, I bet he just wants attention. Teacher recognizes he is not yet ready for step 2, which is listening with empathy and attunement. When he's having these thoughts and these judgments and all this anger toward Jeremy, not ready for number 2 himself. So he steps in and says, Jeremy, I cannot let you tackle. Somebody could get hurt. I need you to sit down right here while I take some deep breaths. Then we'll talk about how you're feeling. You can squeeze this big pillow until I get back, and Mrs. Klein will be here to make sure you're safe. Okay, might be hard to think of all of that in the moment, but it is important to act on our feet sometimes. Any distraction that might work for a couple of minutes, don't worry about if it seems like rewarding the behavior. You're not, you are taking steps to help the student through this. So Mrs. Klein is maybe the aide, and you can't leave the student alone, but you're going to take some deep breaths. Teacher steps away for 2 to 3 minutes of deep breathing. Teacher shows himself compassion in dealing with this stressful event, challenges those assumptions that he's having, like he should know better, he's being a brat, and reminds himself instead that Jeremy is trying to meet his need for something. And it occurs to the teacher, it could be social interaction, or it could be large motor input. And we don't know. Those would be my 2 best guesses for tackling, is either Jeremy wants to connect with his peers and he just doesn't have a better way of doing it right now, or his body is seeking some input, large motor. Maybe he has OT and this is maybe a known kind of issue or need for him. Okay, quick graphic here that I want to share with you from Wholehearted School Counseling. I follow them on Facebook, and they are always giving out free PDFs of some of their posters that you can print out. And this one I would print out and put it by, the teacher's desks or an area in the classroom where you and your aides frequent. It's some things we can remind ourselves of before responding to a child who is acting out. I'll take deep breaths. I'm the adult. I'm the captain of this ship. They are doing the best they can given what they know in this moment. Remember that the prefrontal cortex has not yet fully developed yet, will not be until their mid-20s. Their protective brain is directing them right now, or I choose to respond with kindness and compassion. Really good reminders, especially if we're a little dysregulated. We might have a hard time remembering these things on our own. All right, so now the teacher has taken some deep breaths, reappraised their more judgmental thoughts, and they're ready to listen with empathy and attunement. So this is an example of, let's say Jeremy can name his feelings, and then I'm going to give you an example if Jeremy's not particularly verbal or able to name their feelings. Okay, so the teacher says, hey, Jeremy, how are you feeling right now? And Jeremy says, great. The teacher says, it looks like you were having fun tackling Damon. Was that fun for you? So in this case, I might not show that I think it's fun, but I'm not going to judge. Was that fun for you? Jeremy says, yeah, I love playing with my friends like I'm a football player. Oh, I can see how that would be fun for you. Do you like football? I love football. Wow, you sure do. Now, if Jeremy is not able to name his feelings. So here he says he wants to play with his friends like he's a football player. that might indicate it's social, but again, it's tackling, who knows? So now the teacher might, let's say Jeremy can't express himself very well. So step 2, start over. Hey, Jeremy, how are you feeling right now? Jeremy's just silent and shrugs. Teacher says, when you tackled Damon, you were laughing. That tells me you were having fun. Were you having fun trying to play with Damon? Jeremy says, yeah. Teacher says, it is fun to play with our friends, isn't it? Do you like to tackle or play rough sometimes? Does that feel good to your body? Jeremy says, yeah. Okay, so now moving on to step 3, we've got Jeremy at least interacting with us. He's maybe a little bit more calmed down and talking to us. Now we're going to acknowledge, validate, and label. Teacher says it is fun to play with friends, doing something you love like football. And it's fun to do things that feel good to our bodies. And Jeremy says, yeah, football's so fun. And I want to be Damon's friend. I want to play like the kids at recess who play football. Teacher says, I could tell you were having fun because you were smiling and laughing. Now, step 4, begin problem solving. Teacher says, I love to see you having fun and I want you to have fun. But it didn't look like Damon was having fun. Damon's face got red and he yelled, stop. How do you think Damon was feeling? Let me pause here. This right here is so much more effective than just asking, how do you think Damon felt? Right? In a really judgmental, angry way, where the kid's going to shut down and now they don't really care how Damon felt because now they're spiraling in shame and criticism, right? Sometimes we think we're teaching empathy because we're asking maybe somewhat the right questions, but we're just not going about it with the whole vibe that we need to. So instead, in this example, we are teaching awareness. The last example was self-awareness. Now we're teaching Jeremy how to notice and recognize feelings in others, and that's a relationship skill. That's one of the competencies of SEL. So still validating every step of the way, and being very concrete about how we know that Damon was not having fun. His face got red and he yelled, stop. How do you think Damon was feeling? Jeremy says, mad. Teacher says, yes, that's great that you can name Damon's feelings. I agree he seemed mad. I was also worried because it's not safe to tackle in the classroom like that. I was afraid someone could get hurt. So that's why I stepped away to take some deep breaths because I was feeling very worried. Teacher says, next time you want to play with a friend, what do you think might help you do that in a safer way? Jeremy says, not tackling. Teacher, yes, definitely not tackling. We've talked about that, right? But I still want you to have fun with friends. Is there anything safe you can think of that you could do in the classroom to have fun with friends when you get that urge? Jeremy says, maybe a high five. Great idea. And what about asking a friend to sit down and read about a book about football together? I know Jamie likes football too, and we could get some football books from the library tomorrow. So as you're problem solving, it might just be your ideas, but hopefully the student can offer some ideas as well. And you just want to brainstorm together how to meet the need in a way that is more socially appropriate. If you think, so this was more of if you're thinking it's a social issue, and you might just have to pick one if you're kind of guessing and you don't know the purpose behind the behavior, you might just have to pick one and go with that. But one way or another, here it is if you think it's more of like large motor input need. So the teacher might say, does it feel good to your body to do big things where your whole body is involved? Jeremy says, yeah. Teacher says, I want you to do what your body needs, but we have to be safe. Can you think of another big body activity where nobody could get hurt? Jeremy says, run around. Teacher says, that's one idea. Probably not the idea we want, right? But we can't do that in the classroom. Do you see that beanbag over there? Would you like to fall into it sometimes if your body feels like it needs a big body activity? Now, this might not be realistic in your class, right? But it's just an example. So now we're moving on to teaching coping skills. Next time you want to tackle, you can come up to me and tell me, I want to play with friends. And then I can help you out with that. Or next time you want to tackle, you can say to yourself, I want to tackle, but this isn't football time. I'll look at my list of safe friendship activities and then provide a list of ideas if you think they can be independent like that. Or next time you want to tackle, you can say to yourself, I need to do a big body activity. I'll look at my list of big body choices, and here is a list of safe ways to do that. Now, obviously, if you were going to use this like beanbag idea or something like that, you would want to teach how to do it safely. You would want to make sure it's in a space in the classroom where it would be safe to do that out of harm's way. Then you're going to check in with the student the next day, maybe later that day. Follow up with any new plan a few times to check in with how it's going. Some ideas that were presented during that problem-solving stage may actually be problematic, and you didn't foresee that. Might be unrealistic, and you guys tried it, but it's just not working out, or it's not meeting the student's needs. So it may be necessary to go back to the drawing board with a student and come up with some different ideas until an effective plan is in place. And the student may need to continue to hear validating statements from you until, so to speak, their cup has been filled. So here is one sort of list, again, from that Wholehearted School Counseling that you may like, or you could create one like it. This could be at one individual student's desk, or it could be on the wall, or it could be both. But I feel the student would identify how they're feeling. I feel frustrated, angry, annoyed. I can, and then here are a list of safe activities that might resonate with them to help them regulate and get back to a better place. So co-regulation, I already talked about. I'm going to skip through it for right now because I do have a lot on it, but we are coming up on almost an hour now. So let me, if you want to know more about this though, please go ahead and check out those slides with the QR code that I shared at the beginning. Okay, let's talk though about how to self-regulate while teaching. Because like I said, that is step one, most important step to take. Use the skills you're teaching, observe your own feelings and responses during stressful times in the classroom, pay attention to those thoughts, resist judgment, get curious about them, question your more negative beliefs, and use some strategies to self-calm and respond effectively and compassionately. So let me show you some examples of how you might do that. I kind of already went over the first one, but let me do it again. This one's a little bit different. So good morning. Ooh, you might be talking to your students, right? There was so much traffic on my drive. When I arrived in the classroom, my stress level was at a 4 out of 10 or a 6 out of 10, whatever it was. I took some deep breaths and I turned on some soft music, and now I feel much calmer. Or let's say there's construction outside or a very loud noise happened outside of the classroom. It jolted everybody. That's an opportunity where maybe you're teaching and you really do feel a little thrown off by it. You can say, gosh, I feel so distracted from that loud noise that just happened. I'm going to pause this lesson and take a few deep breaths. Do you guys want to take some deep breaths with me? Because chances are that noise really bothered some of your students as well. Or if the classroom is noisy, you might say, I feel overwhelmed right now because the classroom is so noisy. I'm going to take a drink of water, read an affirmation, and then I'll get everyone quieted down. I think I have an example of an affirmation jar in a couple of slides that I'll show you, but I love affirmations. Affirmations are sort of reappraising thoughts, or, I can handle things by staying calm, things like that. And you can create a jar with a bunch of just printed out, cut up affirmations. You can have one for students, one for teachers. I think it's a really nice idea. Or you might say, just for anything, I need a moment to get myself feeling calm, and then we'll talk about how you're feeling. Okay. So actually, yeah, that is the end. So thank you so much. Here are a few references, and I hope you learned a few new things. And thank you again for joining me.